Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Tax Sale Insiders. Again, I am your host, Rachel Seidensticker, the COO over at Tax Sale Resources, and I'm here with Brian Seidensticker, the CEO, and I'm excited to have him. And we've been covering a lot of different subjects, but we're going to get very specific today. We've talked tax liens, we've talked redeemable deeds, we've talked deed states, but today we want to actually talk about Texas specifically, which I think will be great to hear your wisdom and information on what you know about Texas. And of course, I know that we're going to touch on probably our financing product that is in Texas as well, and how you can kind of grow your portfolio in that way. So anyway, let's just start with a brief overview of what it takes to invest in Texas, and is it a tax lien state or something different?
Loaded question. Good loaded question. Hi, everybody. So Texas is what we consider to be a redeemable deed state, right? Again, investors are going to the auctions with the intent of owning the real estate. The bids are reflect that, but has this redemption period, right? And you do have some ownership rights during that redemption period, but again, it can redeem during that redemption period, hence the redeemable deed name. So Texas is not what we consider a lien. It's different, and you got to go about it a little differently than a lien sale.
Can you give some further, I guess, extrapolate some of the specifics to that redemption period? I know there's some differences, and I can't totally remember, but I know that there's a 6 month and a year. But can you explain that a little bit different, or to everybody?
Yeah. So I believe there's a little even further nuances than this, but it really comes down to if the property is not a homestead, that redemption period is 6 months, right? If that property is a homestead, then that redemption period is 2 years, right? So that's a big difference, right, in what you can do and when, and at least having that data point can changes the decision, can change the decision immensely. So that's the biggest difference, again, the state statutes and local attorney can help you figure out the further nuance, but that's the biggest one to keep an eye out for.
Okay, great. So let's talk about any nuances that, to investing in tax delinquent properties in Texas. What makes this different from other states?
Well, beyond the redemption period, right? And you're going to the auction, you're bidding just like you're buying the property, right? And so, it's not a lien, right? And if it's a property of value, right, the opening bid amount that is advertised is exactly that. Typically, the bids go way higher real quick, and so you can't really use that opening bid as a value of maybe I can buy that property. You're really looking at the property and what are you willing to purchase that property for, because it's highly likely other people are going to bid too, right? So you got to know where your upper limit is. That's a difference, with Texas and redeemable deeds in general versus liens.
Okay.
Just knowing what you can do during the redemption period as well is pretty key, because again, you do have some property ownership rights, but not entirely. Things like improvements and so forth, you can do them, right? But if it redeems, you may not be reimbursed for it. And just knowing those nuances of Texas versus other states.
Okay. So let's talk about how liens work in Texas. And I'm going to lead you in a little bit because I have, some knowledge here in the sense that there's a delinquency that's placed on the property, and then there's this time frame, right? That liens go through, or the delinquencies go through before they hit a sale. And maybe just talk to all of those different timelines from once there's an actual delinquency to once it hits a sale. Then we have the redemption period. And then what does it look like after that redemption period and actually acquiring the property? So start to finish.
Got it. Well, Texas is unique, and they have what we call lien loans, right? And basically what happens is, the moment that the tax bill is issued and is considered delinquent, which is typically, I think, February of every year, there's companies, you do have to be licensed. This isn't something you go and there's no auction, right? It's basically an advertising as a loan. Now there's companies that basically advertise, hey, you're delinquent in your taxes. I can help pay those for you. And the collateral that they take as that lien is basically, or the collateral they take for that loan is a lien on the property that is basically just like a tax lien. And so that's how they collateralize those micro loans. I've mentioned in previous videos that think of tax liens as a micro mortgage, and in Texas, this lien loan process is very, very similar to that. Now, there's a period of time, a repayment period, right? And if you don't pay your taxes, then I don't know exactly what the statutes are. This is where we'll recommend talking to a local attorney. But if the lien loan isn't paid, then there's a period of time until the lien holder, right, on the loan, right, the lien holder can basically start a foreclosure process, right? And that foreclosure process culminates in what most people are familiar with as the redeemable deed auction in Texas. So there's the lien loan, there's a period of time called the foreclosure period, and then there's the redeemable deed auction, right? And then there's the redemption period after that redeemable deed auction. That's what varies, whether it's 6 months for non-homestead properties or 2 years for homestead properties. And then after that redemption period is over, is basically you already own the property, right? There's no chance for redemption. And then typically you now have to go through a quiet title process or some sort of process in order to get insurable title on that property. And so there's a multi-step phase of delinquency in Texas, but most investors really only participate in the trailing end of that, the redeemable deed auction, that redemption period, and then the actual quieting of the title or title insurance process at the very end.
Yeah, and I believe, if I understand correctly, it's why there are law firms that handle the redeemable deed sales, because that's actually the foreclosure process, correct? And so that's why there's that's a significant difference than a redeemable deed sale and other locations where the treasurer is handling those still. But in Texas, law firms are handling that. Is that
correct? Correct. It's a foreclosure sale, and those law firms are handling it, either for those private investors that did the lien loans, right, or they're handling it for the counties, right? Either way, but that's why attorneys are involved in the process.
Great. All right, good. At least I knew a little something. So, all right. So in that, what concerns do you think investors should take into account when buying delinquencies in Texas? And are there any lien position issues or anything else that's odd that we need to consider? Any gotchas?
Yeah, well, there's always gotchas. I mentioned already the homestead versus non-homestead. There's other there's always, I'll call municipal liens that may have priority, right, superiority over the tax lien, right, that survive that process. And so that there's the difference between insurable title and clear title, right? You can buy that redeemable deed, you can get to the end, you can go through the process of getting insurable title and still not have clear title, meaning there's you didn't mow your lawn, right, lien on that property that survives that whole process, right? So there's definitely other things that you need to look into and account for as part of that process. You're not getting a perfect property and a perfect title at the end of the day.
Okay. Do you have any strategies? I know you've spoken a lot to kind of like overarching strategies in past interviews, but how about any specifics to Texas that maybe investors could keep in mind? Obviously, we're not here to give legal advice, but any strategies or things that might kind of help them get started? Yeah,
I think as a new investor going to Texas, probably the biggest piece of information I would recommend is avoid the urban areas. There's a lot of, I'll say, institutional level capital at the urban areas because the volume's higher and the competition's a lot higher. So the chance of getting a deal at those auctions in the urban areas is much less likely than if you're willing to go to a more rural area. It doesn't have to be podunk in the middle of nowhere, right? can, right? You might get a great deal, but I'll say the periphery of those urban areas there where you still have decent properties at a sizable volume, but you don't have the crazy amount of competition. One advantage that you have in Texas and some states as well is all the sales are on the same day, right? So it's very hard for institutional customers to scale, and have a bidder at every auction. And so they typically try to attend the auctions where there's a lot of volume so they can concentrate their capital appropriately. And so that's an advantage for everyday investor. Avoid those areas and you might be able to still find pretty good deals out there.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. How could we help invest in Texas?
Well, I think a shameless plug of our research tool, but the biggest thing in Texas, right, is all this auctions on the same day. So it's really selecting which auctions you're going to go to. And our tool, the research tool, allows you to underwrite the whole state. So if you're after a very specific property type and you want to avoid those urban areas, you can underwrite the whole state in a few hours and really narrow down to say, okay, these auctions or this auction, one auction, it gives me the best chance of buying the properties that I'm after. And that might vary from 1 month to the next, right? And so looking at a whole state every month, is something that you couldn't do, 3 or 4 years ago. And now you can underwrite the whole state. Typically 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks before the auction, narrow it down to the auction that you think is the most likely to get you a property that you're looking for and attend. And you can repeat that process and you're not having to totally shoot in the dark, go to an auction, right? Nothing there, go to the next auction, nothing there, right? You can at least attend the auctions that will have a property that you're shooting for.
Great. And how about, I think it would be great to tell everybody about our financing product because Texas is one of the states that we are in and have opened up for our financing product. So you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I guess the typical, I would say, pain point for investors in redeemable deed states like Texas and Georgia has been that redemption period, right? Of you can't go get bank financing because you got this redemption period, right? So that redemption period precludes you from being able to get title insurance, so the banks won't finance you. So whatever cash you have on hand is really tied up, right? For non-homestead properties, 6 months. For homestead properties, 2 years before you can do anything with it. And our financing program is really a capital partnership program geared especially for those situations. We understand tax sales, we understand redemption periods, and we're actually able to provide capital for those situations between auction and when you have insurable title and allow you to get more capital, go buy more redeemable deeds and scale your investment, right, up 10 times what you can do today. And that's, to our knowledge, is unique and the only one as of today, right? I'm sure that'll change, right, given success. But it's really allows investors that used to be very limited with the cash they have on hand to scale their model into something bigger.
Yeah, it's important to note. You mentioned that all the sales are on the same time of the month and they're monthly. And so that's what Brian's speaking to is being able to, okay, you buy it, we'll say Midland County, and you're holding and you have 6 months or more, depending upon where, what type of property you buy, but you want to be able to go to those other monthly auctions, potentially in Midland or elsewhere if you've pinpoint particular properties. So important stuff, I think.
Yeah, the program really is built to, if you're the investor, you go to an auction, you buy a property, come to us, we'll give you your capital back. And then, before the next auction, the next month, repeat, right? Rinse and repeat. Do that again. Buy a property, come to us, get your capital back, go do it again, and over and over and over.
Yep. Rinse and repeat. I like that. What do you think is the competitive environment in Texas that might be different from other places? I know I can speak to the sales aren't as large as like a Florida, where the lien sales are just huge, tens of thousands of properties. But what do you think that competition? You kind of touched on it, that there's a bit of big fund capital in the state, and so focus on those smaller rural counties. But any other competition that needs to be looked at?
No, I think as I mentioned before, I think the biggest thing is just to recognize, if you're going to go to an auction in Dallas or Austin or Houston, right, you're going to see, hundreds of people there and crazy competition. And so I would say maybe go to those just to see how they, but in general, you're probably going to go to those, watch how the sales occur, and then you're going to go, well, that's not a sale I can participate in. There's crazy money going after crazy deals or crazy prices. It'd be much better served maybe picking a more rural area to go after. That'd be my number one suggestion.
All right. Well, great. Well, thanks for leading us down the path of Texas. It's not, I think they technically kind of, some people call it a tax lien state. We definitely put it in the redeemable deed or hybrid type category. And I appreciate your time here. And we got into some good specifics. So thanks for joining us, Brian.
Absolutely. And good luck, everybody.
Yeah, happy investing. Be sure to check back. We're always posting new podcasts, new interviews. So take a look at taxsaleresources.com. We have a blog, we have the podcast, lots going on. So thanks for joining us. Happy investing.